Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, and we're back with Worshipful Master of the James Earl Acey Lodge number 600, Honorable Ricardo Utai.
We're going to leave the honorable out. I'm not honorable yet, and maybe I'll get there one day.
Hey, man.
But I am the Worshipful Master of James Earl Acey Lodge number 600.
Man, that's big. When we talk about moral and character, we talk about, Masons being men of standard,
Yes.
I think people are looking for that, honorable. That's an honorable man. That's a man of valor. So to
absolutely.
speak. I think our women are looking for men to step up in our community of that caliber, and just to know that we have a group of men here doing the work, setting the standard, being men of their homes. How important is it for a Mason to be a man of his home?
Oh, it's absolutely important. So this organization is based around the family.
Okay.
Right? So a man of this organization definitely should be not only an example in his community, but example to his children, to his wife, to his nephews, his cousins, his uncles, his aunts, whoever.
Right.
You should, when you become a part of this organization, you are definitely the leading example of what a man should be.
Okay.
So that's very, very important that you're an upstanding man to not only to your family, but to your children and those around you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, before we went to commercial break, we were talking about Prince Hall and the impact Prince Hall had directly in Georgia.
Right.
Being Savannah, Georgia, being one of the major hubs of Masonry in Georgia. Like, how did the Prince Hall Masonry get here? Where do we go? Where do we start?
So Prince Hall Masonry started in Georgia in 1870. That was when our first Grand Lodge was created.
Okay.
The first Grand Master was James Sims.
Okay.
And it was created under what we would call the National Compact or the National Grand Lodge.
Oh, wow.
So the National Grand Lodge was like a governing body.
Okay.
That's a great way to put it. And the National Grand Lodge was started around 1847, 1849.
Okay.
And the purpose of the National Grand Lodge was to take all of the black lodges, all the black Grand Lodges around and kind of put them under one umbrella.
Okay.
And keep them kind of organized and keep them going.
Okay.
Well, it was because of the National Grand Lodge Compact that the Grand Lodge of Georgia was created. For colored men.
Okay.
All right. And I'll tell you a funny fact. Around about 1872, 1874, there was another Grand Lodge that was created. It was an independent Grand Lodge, and it was also for black men, for black masonry, right? And it was created by Robert Love, who was a Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Florida for black Masons.
Okay.
And he did not create it for the purpose of having another Grand Lodge in Georgia for black men.
Okay.
When you're talking about in the 1870s, early 1870s, a lot of the prominent black men were doctors, they were lawyers, they were doctors.
Okay.
So you look at Robert Love and James Sims, they kind of ran in the same circles.
Yeah.
The difference between Robert Love and James Sims is that Robert Love was a dark-skinned man. James Sims was a light-skinned man. So there was this society called the Blue Vein Society.
Okay.
During that time period. So Blue Vein Society, of course, it was for lighter-skinned mulatto men.
Okay.
Right? So there was prominent black men who were of lighter skin that was in this Blue Vein Society.
Okay.
Well, they wouldn't let Robert Love join. Right? So Robert Love said, okay, I got you.
Right.
I'm going to create another Grand Lodge in your state. And that's how the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia was created.
Okay.
Eventually, both of those Grand Lodges would combine to make the Grand Lodge that we know of today.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, I want you to go hit on this Robert Love guy and James Sims. So where did they kind of intertwine at? Because I mean, that's almost like a battle from within, a darker black person, a lighter black person, like how did that battle create, and how did it even out and come to where it is for what it represents today?
Well, like I said, really they just Robert Sims and James, or Robert Love and James Sims, they
Okay.
kind of just bumped heads because of their professions.
Okay.
I believe they were both pastors at the time. I think they were pastors. So they kind of just bumped heads. That's
Okay.
all it was. And they were not responsible for the two Grand Lodges combining.
Okay.
Right? So the reason that those two Grand Lodges combined was because of what we would call the Delaware Convention.
Okay.
The Delaware Convention was basically all of the lodges in the country coming together. So you're talking about the lodges, the Grand Lodges that was under the National Grand Lodge,
Okay.
and the Independent Grand Lodges coming together to say, hey, we need to create some solidarity. You know, we
Right.
don't need two black Grand Lodges in every state. We don't need that. So they came together during the Delaware Convention in 1878 and decided that they were going to come together to create just one Grand Lodge in each state.
Okay.
So Robert Love and James Sims, that was way after their time.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But that's how we got the Grand Lodge, the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Okay.
Of course, there were other things that went into play
Right.
during that time period too, which is the cause of the clandestine organizations that we know of today as well.
Okay.
So we're talking about your Prince Hall of Origin, the National Grand Lodge bodies that exist today, because the National Grand Lodge was not supposed to exist
Right.
after the Delaware Convention.
Okay.
The National Grand Lodge was supposed to disappear, and all of the Grand Lodges in each state was supposed to be sovereign, which means that they don't have a governing body. They're independent in their own right.
Okay.
So
okay.
there was some things that happened after the combining of the Grand Lodges, where the National Grand Lodge continued to exist. It wasn't supposed to.
Right. Right.
So, after a certain period, we'd say roughly about 1882, the continuance of the National Grand Lodge would have been considered clandestine because they were not under a governing body.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Wow! And so it looks like this free and accepted Masons in these states, and they came across where it was like James Sims and Robert Love played a role where they were trying to establish these lodges, and then we go back to Prince Hall, and then propel Prince Hall back to where we're moving forward today in Masonry. Am I correct?
Well, of course, Robert Love, during the time period of Robert Love and James Sims, it wasn't called Prince Hall Freemasonry.
Okay.
That didn't come into play until I believe like the 1940s.
Okay.
So it was basically just black Freemasonry.
Okay.
Right, and then you had the National Grand Body, which would that's everything under the National Grand Lodge.
Okay.
Right. So and then you would have with Robert Love the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia for Black Masons.
Okay.
There was a time where we were called the Union Grand Lodge of Georgia. So it changed names over the years a few times.
Okay.
So we eventually became the Prince Hall Grand Lodge in honor of Prince Hall.
Okay.
So we eventually became the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
So we're talking 1940, right before the time, or right during the time John Wesley Dobbs was
During his time period.
During his time period. So now we see the game changing in Freemasonry amongst African-American Freemasons. What was going on during this time? And I know we talked about John Wesley Dobbs advocating for the police officers, black police officers in the community, working hand in hand with government.
Yeah.
So where does that era take us to where we are now?
In what sense?
And as far as like where Masons are at today, advocating in under the same criteria, like the way John Wesley Dobbs.
Well, I think there was a time period where we kind of took a step back.
Okay.
And we just focused more on just being a part of the organization.
Okay.
And not being so much in the community or being politics. Now, the organization overall is nonpartisan.
Right.
We're not political at all.
Okay.
But there were time periods where we worked directly with our representatives.
Okay.
As far as the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia now, those are things that we're getting back to. So even for James or Acey Lodge, We work with a lot of our representatives in the county, in each one of the cities,
Okay.
to kind of build that solidarity and give us, an opportunity to reach the community even more.
Okay.
So we're trying to get back to that, and I'm trying to do my part
Right,
in
right.
the county. So what you see is you'll see us work with the commissioners of the different districts. You'll see us out in the community with the different commissioners. You'll see actually some of your representatives are members of our lodge and of our organization. So we're trying to do our part to reach the community the best way that we can, whether it's through our food giveaways, through the things that we do with the elementary schools, the things that we're going to be doing with the middle schools and the high schools out here. Whether you see us out cleaning the roads, you will see us at the town hall meetings.
Yes.
You see us. You see us. As you said, you look up, you see me everywhere. Right?
Everywhere.
Because we're trying to do our best to not only serve the community, but represent what is best for the community as well.
Okay.
So overall, our organization here in Georgia, that's what we're trying to get back to. We're trying to represent and support the community the best way that we can.
Right. Now, and I can see, just watching you guys in the community, watching the things that are happening. It's not just about wearing the emblem on your chest.
Oh no, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because it's almost like we, just looking on the internet, we got a lot of people who just like to wear the paraphernalia and, tell us about the difference between wearing the paraphernalia and actually doing the work that of a Mason man.
Well, I'm going to tell you. You wear that emblem,
yes, sir.
You better be ready to represent it, right?
Absolutely.
So you're always gonna have those people who are, I would say, they're better followers than they are leaders.
Okay.
Right? So you're always gonna have leaders in your organization, no matter what organization it is.
Okay.
You're always gonna have leaders in your organization, and you're gonna have those people kind of waiting for somebody to tell them what to do.
Okay.
So even when we talk about people just wearing their paraphernalia, I don't think they're just wearing it. I think they're just waiting for somebody to say, "Hey, man, come, let's go do this real quick."
Yeah.
In my own experience, as being the leader of James Earl Acey's lodge, what I have learned is a lot of times people want to do something. They just don't know how to do it. Right. And there are some of us that are set aside to be great leaders.
Okay.
And I would say I was set aside to be a great leader because
Absolutely.
What we have experienced in this lodge is that a lot of these brothers now are a part of something. They're doing something. They're getting out there. They're coming up with great ideas. They're implementing those ideas and they're out in the community more.
Okay.
So I think it's just more or less that we need to, find somebody to lead.
Okay.
Rather than just waiting for somebody, to do something.
Yes.
That also plays into our community, right? When we talk about our young men, we're so hard on our young men.
Man.
Right? We always talk about what they're not doing, and, all the messed up stuff that they are doing. You know what I've learned about a lot of these young men? They're warriors at heart.
Man.
They are warriors at heart. All they need is a good leader.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
So I picture or I envision that this organization can help build those leaders to help these young men, right?
Man, you saying it.
Because that's what we've done in the past. That's what we're continuing to do. So I'm more likely to try and help that young man than to say, "Oh man, that kid is a lost cause." I don't believe anybody's a lost cause.
At all.
If you're in a room of 100 people and only one person listens out of that 100,
yes, sir,
you're still succeeding.
You're
It's still a
succeeding.
victory.
Man, that is so awesome, and it goes back when you talk about the young men, the young males of today being warriors. I see that every day working with our organization, Streets of Gentlemen. I am seeing, a lot of people want to say, "Hey man, they got these dreads and they got these locks and they all hanging in. They can't even get a job." But what I'm seeing in these young men is that their grace is in their locks, and they're warriors, and they're willing to create avenues of learning and growing and providing for their family. They just need the guidance. And one thing about me growing up, seeing the Masons operate, I live like that today. You
right,
know,
absolutely. One thing that you learn too is people fear what they don't understand.
right?
Right. So even when we talk about the propaganda that was created about this organization, about Freemasonry, about
Okay.
Prince Hall Freemasonry, it's a fear of what people don't understand. So even when we talk about the young men, how they have their locks and everything, and
Yeah.
how they dress and things like that, can we change some of it? Yes.
Okay.
But I'm not against their locks.
No,
I'm
not at
against
all.
it
Not at all.
And I think it's just more or less the fear of not really understanding the meaning behind it and how important it is to these young men and their culture.
Right.
What we have to remember that the young men or black people in this country period have lost their legacy for hundreds and hundreds of years. So now you are seeing these young people trying to get back to their roots.
Ooh.
So why do we want to take that from them?
Man.
So instead of us judging them and passing judgment on them, I think it's more important that we need to teach them how to play the game. The one thing that I always say is that you have to learn the game, to play the game, to beat the game, to change the game.
Man, you gotta change the game. What? Speaking of young men, speaking of men making a good man a better man.
Yes.
What's next for James Earl Acey as far as like? I know you guys are in the schools, but is there any type of program you guys have where you're mentoring and working hand in hand with young men in the community, or you got plans? What's next? Because I know it's a lot of single mothers out here, and mothers who have husbands in the home,
Yes.
who are looking to get their sons or their nephews or their brother around good men of moral character.
So here in Henry County, what you see is each city.
Okay.
You're talking Stockbridge, McDonough, Locust Grove, Hampton. All of those cities are creating their own youth programs, their youth councils, right? Okay. So what we're trying to do with James Earl Acey is we're trying to leverage that to also help the young men that are going to be in these areas, these youth councils, these youth groups.
Gotcha.
And to be a part of what we call our Knights of Pythagoras.
Okay.
Which is basically our mentorship or mentor group for young men.
Okay.
Right? So they'll be directly connected to our lodge, and we will mentor them.
Okay.
We will provide them from as early as 7, 8 years old, all the way until they, college, 20 some years old. We will provide them with mentorship. There will be somebody that they can talk to.
Okay.
Right? Now that's just here in Henry County.
Okay.
The KOP actually exists all over Georgia.
Wow.
So it's not just something that we're doing. Our Grand Lodge also provides that same program in Atlanta, in the outer lane cities of outside of Atlanta. So the KOP is definitely accessible to anybody.
Yes.
It's just more or less just trying to reach out to them. And if somebody wants to find, the KOP in their area, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself or any of the brothers from James Earl Acey Lodge. We are on Facebook under James Earl Acey number 600, and we will point you in the right direction because we are very, very focused on helping the young men.
Man, that's huge, man, because I know growing up, we were a part of like Knights of Pythagoras, and just being able to work up under solid leadership,
right. Man,
I mean, it set those gems and those stones of who we are today,
Right.
And so now it was I talking about bringing those young men in. We just had a situation in college where a young man got hazed.
Right.
Right. Now, over the years, we've seen it, organizations saying, "Hey, man, the Mason boy, they're gonna whoop you boy. You get up in there, like what does that look like? I mean, how do Masons feel about when bringing like young men in or bringing in new people? I know everybody has their way, but how do Masons feel today about hazing? With the risk of kids dying. We just seen that recently at a college. Tell us what that looks like.
So the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia actually has a no hazing policy.
Okay.
So we don't do any hazing whatsoever.
Okay.
What we focus on is knowledge. We want you to learn what you need to learn, understand what you're a part of, and being able to apply the knowledge that we provide to you.
Okay.
We don't do any hazing whatsoever. So that whole ideology, when you come in, they gonna do this, no, we're not gonna do any of that. If the most I'll probably do is give you a hug, man. I might give you a good talking to, but that's probably it, man.
That's it.
If you don't like me giving you a good talking to, I'm sorry, but that's most what you're gonna get from James or Acey Lodge and any lodge under the most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Okay. Because you know, back in the day, man, it used to be kind of there, So
I've heard some things, but as of now, we don't do stuff like that.
Okay.
We're more focused on actually learning and knowing the things that you need to know.
Man, anything you would like to leave with our audience, man? First of all, we want to thank you for taking out the time and sharing your story. Anything you would like to share with our audience before we leave?
Yes, I would like to say, before we pass judgment on anything, we need to first understand, what we're taking a look at, what we're a part of, and what we're doing. Right. And another thing is, I think it's very important that we understand the history of our people. Wow. Right. So to keep from repeating the failures of our past, we have to first understand what those failures were. What we were a part of, what happened to our people. Now, that doesn't mean that you leave with anger, but you leave with understanding.
Yes.
Once you understand what your ancestors have gone through, what your great-grandparents, grandparents, whomsoever, what they went through, it makes it easier for you to move forward. Again, we have to learn how to play the game. Right. First things first, you gotta play the game.
Man, you heard it right here on Voices of the Village podcast. Worshipful Master Ricardo Utai, James Earl Acey, Lodge number 600, right here in Henry County. How can, if I wanted to be a Mason as a man, how can I join? Can I just come? Not like what do I have to do? Because what's required?
Well, ask one to be one.
Okay.
That's what you'll hear most of us say. But no, the first thing you need to do, you can go to the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia website, and there is an option down there for somebody to get in contact with you. Also, if you want to be a part of the Grand Lodge of Georgia, you can do the same thing there as well. Of course, I'm partial to Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia. I love Grand Lodge of Georgia, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Absolutely.
Also, if you do know a legitimate Mason, a Prince Hall Mason or a Grand Lodge Estate Mason, you can ask them as well. That's where the moniker "to be one, ask one" comes from. Because we don't recruit at all. Right. So you actually have to come to us. You have to ask us to be one. And that is the best way to do it. Either visit our website or speak to an actual member of our organization, and it'll go from there.
Man, that's awesome, man. We want to again thank you for taking the time out sharing this. Now, I know for a fact we're gonna have to come back for part 2 because I know for a fact, because I know on TikTok we're gonna be taking some shots and people are gonna be taking some shots at some of the things, but we have to put things in order and we have to make sure that the real is put out there. It's two sides to every story, and we just want to make sure that people get informed the right way. You guys, thank you for tuning in. Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. Worshipful Master Ricardo Utai, James Earl Acey, Lodge number 600. Thank you for tuning in.
Justice and peace and equality. Now the world they will see.